Mr. Gibson, I perked my ears up when I heard you talk about your father having flown B-24s. That was arguably one of the toughest positions to be in during that era. So I have a great deal of respect for him. There's an IG report, and this is something I'd like to have you be aware of, if confirmed. It was released just recently, and the report says that as of March the 31st of this year, there are 1,298 IG recommendations that DOD has yet to take action on. Have you heard anything about this report?
Yes, Senator, I have a chance to take a look at it.
All right. I think I briefly mentioned this to you when you were in my office, but 58 of these potential monetary benefits, according to the IG, said that if all 58 were implemented, DOD could save more than $33.6 billion. Well, that's, I think that's worthwhile going over all 58, because a lot of work, and I talked to some of the people involved in this study, they really believe that it can be done. But to do this, you're going to have to get away from business as usual, and we're going to have to directly direct those areas. Some will be politically maybe unpopular, but they're areas that we'll be able to hopefully save a lot of money, and $33 billion is a lot of money. Is that your intention to look into this?
Yes, Senator. I believe that the IG report, other sources of opportunity, such as an expertise, such as the Defense Business Board, the GAO, or any other areas of the private sector that we can leverage to help us find these solutions is essential to having this reform be a success.
Good, and I appreciate that. I want to try to get through all four of these. Ms. Lord, you know, you have a background that just might put two new eyes to work on some things that haven't been tried before. And we're all familiar with the cost overruns and with the failure to meet acquisition timelines and failing to deliver the products. The things that bother me, and I've lived through these, is when we'll have a system that is recommended. In the case, I remember so well, of the Future Combat System, that was 2009. Then prior to that even was the Crusader, that was 2002. Now both of those programs were vehicles that would be in the United States Army that would give us a great advantage. Now we spent a lot of money, a total of $22 billion on these programs. Both of them at different times were junked, completely lost. And it's something I know the times can change and the Pentagon can change, the leadership can change, but have you given any thought to what could be done to look into the future to preclude that from happening? Somehow making the determinations before we get billions of dollars in debt on some of these. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Senator. In fact, I was involved with Future Combat Systems and witnessed firsthand the issues right at the onset of the program in terms of requirements not being balanced with budgets and schedules. There was a disconnect between what the users wanted and what the acquisition community wanted. So if confirmed, one of my key efforts would be to make sure at the onset of programs we understand the scope of the program, the requirements, what the cost and timing implications of each of those requirements are, and to make sure that we adjudicate all of those.
Do you think if you'd have been able to do that back at that time, that could have precluded the disaster, the economic disaster that resulted?
Whenever a cross-functional team gets together and looks at what the challenges are and comes up with a budget and a schedule and has a cadence of reviews, yes, I think you could.
Yeah, and some people are talking about if you could change the buying, the weapons system, to a minimum number to keep production lines open, that could be more cost-effective. Is that something that makes any sense to explore?
Well, I think understanding what minimum sustainable rates are for our national defense security is important, and I think if you look at what that minimum sustainable rate is and then scale up from there, yes, you can make good decisions.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Niemeyer, I recognize it's true that you have been through some the BRAC rounds and know the history of it, but I have too. All 5 backgrounds, I've been there. And one thing that is always true with all 5 backgrounds is that it costs money the first few years. Is this really a time that we can afford? Right now, I've never seen us in a situation, which I'll pursue when I ask the question to Mr. Donovan, that we're more strapped than we are right now. Now, I'm not going to ask that question. I want to talk to you about that as this moves along. There's going to be some amendments offered that quite frankly, I think I'll end up opposing. But the thing that I think is significant is what has happened. Russia has been, the economic savior of Russia has been their sale of oil and gas to countries who'd rather buy it from us. And I'm very proud that to have the president. In fact, I was invited over to Lithuania when they opened their LNG terminal and to praise them. So would you generally agree with the statement that President Trump made recently when he said we're committing to securing their access to alternative sources so Poland and its neighbors will not be held hostage? And do you think that's a major change that is going to be helpful to us in bringing back our people to us? Because, as you know, with the shale revolution and everything else, good things are happening here in the United States.
Sir, I agree with that, and I believe that offers an amazing potential for a large portion of the country to be able to benefit from that.
Okay. And Mr. Donovan, there's not time for me to ask the question I was going to ask because my time's already expired, but I do want you to be aware that General Goldfein was right when he testified that the Air Force is going to be 1,500 pilots short by the end of this fiscal year, and 1,300 of those are fighter pilots. I see this as a crisis. I am a commercial pilot. I talk to these guys, and my feeling is it's not an inadequacy of bonuses as much as it is not being able to fly the hours that they should be flying. Just ask you if you have any, I know you're fully aware of the problems that we have in our pilot shortage. Anything very briefly you can comment on, and then maybe for the record, elaborate a little bit more.
Yes, sir, Senator. I couldn't agree with you more, and Joan Goldfein has been very clear about if pilots aren't able to fly, then they're going to go somewhere where they can, and they're certainly voting with their feet. I think it has to do with the capacity. The capacity of the Air Force is so low that it's not able to ride out the storm that we're seeing developing. I'll be glad to expand on that in questions for the record.
That would be great. Senator